Hello, welcome back to It's Really Long. In today's episode, I'll be reading River of Sin by Casper. And as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to get notifications every time I release a new video. Content warning for sex, heterosexual sex, edge play, edging, blood, BDSM, restraints, cussing. Let's get started. Her fingers twiddled around the band of his pants, pulling every now and again and allowing a small, attentive hand to brush against his bronze skin. For him, each brush was like a wisp of pleasure, yet still torturing as she always pulled away, never venturing further than his navel. He wanted to beat her, teach her a lesson, but she wouldn't have any of that. He was putty in her hands, and he damn well knew it. Gritting his teeth, he tried hard not to concentrate on the nipples that grazed his chest through her blouse. Oh, the way they cut him, like glass. Trying hard not to reach behind her and pull her to him, he bit the inside of his mouth and cursed all women for the siren dance they graced men with. "What is it, Jack? Does it bother you that you can't have whatever you want, whenever you want it?" Her smile would have seduced the devil. Again she rubbed up against him, her fingers gently playing with his skin along his abs before she leaned forward, her breath raining on his face in puffs. "Don't fuck with me, Elizabeth," he said her name, with such a drunken splendor that it almost seemed like a cry for pity, then a warning to stop with the teasing. She was going to kill him, a man who outlived many trials in his life, managed to come back from the dead and take back the ship which rightfully belonged to him, and she wasn't even really trying. Elizabeth moved up against him, her fingers dipping down to the floor at the same time her lips caressed his so lightly it felt like a warm, silky air. A click sounded in the quiet room, and his eyes snapped open. Immediately he pulled at his hands to find them only going so far. They were locked to the captain's chair in his chambers. The sudden feel of fury swept around him as he tried another yank that did just as little as the first. "Damn you, wench," he gritted, his fingers trying to seize the woman, but she had already started to hop away from him. Her eyes glazed over with pleasure. Licking her lips, she tilted her head to the side and smirked. "Now I'll show you exactly what should have happened on that ship, Mr. Sparrow." Before he could question her, she allowed her clothes to pool straight to her boots. He swallowed hard. "Do you want me, Captain?" She swayed her hips, causing his eyes to follow the action completely. Damn, his mouth was salivating just to taste that creamy skin. His whisper came out hoarse. "Yes." She dipped down, running a single finger that started from the toe of her boot up to her half-exposed calf and meandered just at her thigh before dipping down between legs and touched the folds which glistened with moisture. Dear God. Harder than he ever thought to be, he watched as she trailed a finger just at the folds, teasing, then dipping and plucking at her clit. She let out a moan and pulled her hand away. "See, I can handle the torture, Mr. Sparrow." She placed her foot on the arm of the chair, allowing him to see her bare mound. "But it seems you're simply an amateur." His eyebrow rose. "If there is one thing that I know I am not, it is an amateur, Miss Swann." She leaned in further, the smell of her arousal drafting up to his sensitive nose. Now if only she had. Never unprepared, Elizabeth pulled a small container from just behind him and brought it to her lips. She allowed the rum to slip past her lips while a few drops slid down her chin, along her jaw, before dropping onto her breasts, which gleamed in the candle-lit room. Everything seemed to dull out as he became highly sensitized by the drop that hung on her nipple. Elizabeth huskily asked, "Would you like a taste?" Not even realizing he was already nodding, he squeezed out a yes. Fuck, she really aimed to put him in Davy's locker. She didn't hesitate as she cupped his jaw into her hand and brought it to his lips. As soon as he could reach, he was lapping at the luscious little bud that twisted in sheer ecstasy. The taste of rum mixed with the taste of Elizabeth nearly caused him to climax right then and there. Reaching between his legs, she pulled out his cock from his breeches and frowned. Oh, this won't do. You're so hard, yet you still haven't earned your release. He nipped at her nipple in response. Again, she purred. He again nipped her before sucking it, rolling his tongue around its center. When he felt her intake of air, he bit down, hard. She moaned out, her hand falling into his hair. Good, she whispered before the seduction once again took over her features. He noted the small trail of juices running down her thigh and smirked. Yes, very good indeed. Have I earned my reward? Elizabeth chuckled. Perhaps, but I think you of all men could do so much better. Please me, Captain Sparrow. Fuck me with your mouth. She brought her body up, both knees resting on the arms of his chair, as she slackened the holds of the chain on his locked cuffs. He smirked. With pleasure, love. Normally, this might have been a tad difficult. Luckily, Elizabeth was just the right height for him to reach her. With one long lick, he brushed against the folds of her and smiled when he felt her body jump at the roughness of his tongue. He placed pressure at the lining where the folds hid their little buried treasure and darted his tongue out to hit the mark. She convulsed, her nails digging into his shoulders, probably leaving half-moon marks. When he thought she would nearly finish, he was surprised to find her pouring more of the rum down her front, this time just above her navel as it flowed to meet where his tongue laid at her center. The second the blends came together, Jack suddenly couldn't stop as he nibbled, licked, and bit at her swollen lips. Elizabeth, lost to the tuff of painful pleasure, exploded against his mouth as he continued to swallow the taste, the heavenly mixture of the two things he loved, booze and women. Untangling herself from him, she went to her knees and grasped his cock in her hands, which instantly hardened even more. Swallowing down a moan, Jack watched as she slowly lowered her lips over the tip before darting her tongue out to circle it and nibble the side. Then she took him all in. He nearly died and gone to Davy Jones's locker once more at the feel of her warm cavern around him. She pulled back, letting her teeth rake over the side. He jumped up, his binds rattling as she brought her tongue against him, rubbing and stroking. When he didn't think he could take much more, she went down on him completely. His head hit the back of her throat. She pulled back, then repeated, deep-throating him until he could go no farther. Fuck, he seethed as he flooded her throat with his seed. She greedily swallowed, taking it with pride and then letting him fall around her mouth, sitting back on her haunches. She licked her lips and smiled adorably up at him. Not bad. She reached for the container of rum and took a long, hard swig. He instantly felt blood rush to his groin once more, as if he never came just seconds ago. How the fuck could she do that? What's the matter, Jack? She cooed, fingers twisting around his cock again. Are you not up to the challenge? Could she have put any more emphasis on the up? He grabbed her waist before she had a chance to do anything and pulled her to his lap. Already her hands were burying their way into his hair as her legs wound themselves around his waist. Not at all surprised by the enthusiastic smile, she tilted her head down at him. How on earth did you break free of those cuffs? He smirked. After being a pirate for a long while, you tend to pick up traits that will one day come in handy, especially when being arrested on the spot for even looking like a pirate. So I underestimated the great Captain Sparrow, did I? She chided with laughter in her voice as she leaned in for a kiss. He smirked before capturing her lips between his. He bit down and iron flooded his taste buds. Crowing in arousal, Elizabeth leaned into him, her hips already adjusting her body so that she hovered just above his naked cock. Sweat coated her brow as she tried to keep herself from descending down on him. She wished to be in control still, Jack pondered as his fingers dug crescent moons into her hips. Arching at the feel, she eventually bit her bottom lip and roughly hit against his chest. Don't you even, she gritted out, her nether region coasting just above him, the head of his cock brushed against her. It was his turn to sweat, as he let out a low moan. The wench had guts, he'd give her that much. To slip inside her would be the weaker of the two, the one who couldn't hold themselves back. Biting the inside of his cheeks, he waited, carefully watching as she tried her damnedest not to look flustered. But her eyes couldn't hide the lust-filled cry, the screams to be filled with his cock deeply seated inside her. When he was certain he would find victory in their battle, the little wench reached down between them and grasped a hold of him like a lifeline. "Don't think you've won, Jack. I'm far from finished." She squeezed, and he moaned. She stroked him, and his eyes rolled into the back of his head. Just when he was certain that he would release, Elizabeth sat him just at her wet opening. "Say it," she growled into his ear, and he felt all the control he thought slip from his hands. Damn this wench. And with one thrust, he surged into her, nearly throwing the both of them over, the chair toppling on them. Completely lost to the feel of him, Elizabeth let out a growl and rocked against him feverishly, nails biting into his shoulder, legs tightened around his waist, nearly cutting off the circulation. Crashing her lips against his, Jack moaned when her folds clamped down as she came with a flooding wave. "Fuck, wench," he cried out. Still connected, Elizabeth twisted until her back was to him and pounded away, flesh hitting flesh, as Jack felt himself being milked of his seed. The night was going to be a long one, filled with a river of sin that even Davy Jones himself would blush from. Now, if only he could reach that bottle of rum, it would be a wonderful night indeed. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of It's Really Long. Again, that was River of Sin by Casper. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.